What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy ZD. We back over here at Three Man Weave. I am with the lovely co-host CJ, coming at you guys live on a Monday. It's July 21st. CJ, how we doing, man? How you feeling? We had a good conversation for tonight's episode. I'm excited to chop it up about hoops with you, man. But how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Like you said, we chopped it up earlier, so just kind of updated you how it's been. We didn't shoot on Saturday. It's actually Zach and my homie Dorian's birthday today, so happy birthday, y'all. Love y'all. Thank you for everything that you've done for me in my life, and everything else. But yeah, no, it's been good, man. Just excited to see what you know all this news that broke since we weren't able to record on Saturday. Huge. So we'll get into CPs on the Clippers, and Dame is back to the Trailblazers. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about, and then we're also talking about for our offseason file is the Houston Rockets. So we have a nice little episode today, and I'm excited to chop it up with you today, sir. How are you doing today?
Sure. Feeling good, man. Today was a solid Monday, man. I had a great Monday. Day was moving quick. We were chopping it up before we hopped on, and I think just excited to talk basketball with you, man. I'm excited to dive into where the Rockets are. I don't, we talked about them a lot, low key on this pod, but excited to talk about it a little more. And then CP and Dame, bro. I think for me, that's what I'm most excited to talk about. Just seeing those guys go back to their original team. CP obviously being on the Hornets, but I would say the Lob City CP3 is what the kids remember, and then Damian Lillard, of course, heading back to the Trailblazers. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It feels like we're living in like 2012 or something.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. It's crazy how everything is, and we'll get into it, of course. So I want to see your thoughts of everything. But yeah, no, it's exciting, man. Both teams making moves, and obviously, Dame isn't going to be healthy this upcoming season, but CP just being another facilitator on that Clippers team is gonna be exciting. But yeah, no, man, I'm ready to get into it. If you are, man, I'm ready to chop it up. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, CP3 moving on from the Spurs. I mean, we could talk about that for a
Yep.
second. I think his time there was cut short a little bit due to, I thought he was going to finish his career there, just due to the fact of the Wemby factor. I think it was cut short his time in San Antonio because of Wemby's injury. And I think he was feeling a little bit sentimental. The Clippers got him for 3.6 million, which is like no money, but he's also 40 years old, and he's honestly not going to play more than 20 minutes a night, most likely. I think they made this move because he's a really good locker room presence. That's why the Spurs had him on the roster at first, was just to mentor Wemby, mentor De'Aaron Fox. I'm not going to lie to you. This move, in my opinion, was all about Chris Paul. I think he wanted to go back to a team that he felt like he performed his best at, that had the best chance of competing in the playoffs. And I think the Clippers have a really good chance to do that. And I think he saw this opportunity, and it's like, hey, man, I'm going to be playing with some older guys. They're probably going to put me in and give me some more run time. I'm not going to be as much of a mentor as I was in San Antonio, but it's going to give me the opportunity to play basketball. And that's what I love to do. He brings leadership, patience, like you said, in the backcourt. He's one of the greatest facilitators we have of all time. He's still that at this age. You can still pass the ball really well. For me, that's his strength at this moment in time in his career. I would argue a couple years ago, 5, 6 years ago, he was scoring and passing, but he does mostly passing now. So I know the Clippers are excited to have him in the building. He's just going to be an extra facilitator, like you had mentioned, and being around James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, just some older veteran guys he knows are waiting to win a ring. I think that hungriness comes into effect here when I mentioned him going to the Clippers. I think he understands that they do have, I would say a better chance than the Spurs do as of right now to make a playoff push, and he feels like this roster can really, send them off in the sunset in a good way. So shout out to CP3, man. We're excited to see him reunite with the Clippers, like I mentioned earlier, kind of like 2013, 2014 vibes here, but I'm excited to see what he can do. It's not Lob City anymore, but he's looking to make one final push, and I think this is it. This is definitely or should be the last team that he plays for. So hopefully he gets a good send off. CP3 is one of the greatest point guards ever. His decline has been interesting for sure. He hasn't been on the court much, but I got to see him play this past year in San Antonio, so it was pretty cool, man. He was out on the court, seeing an older CP3. I thought it was cool because he's one of my favorite players growing up.
Yeah.
Just seeing him on the Hornets, and obviously what he did with Lob City, it's very sentimental to me and the type of player that he is. So shout out to CP3, man. We'll have to see how he does on the Clippers.
Yeah. No, yeah, bro. It's like you said, CP3 is, one of the greatest point guards I've seen play. Hasn't been able to win a chip, but all that aside, just skill wise, they call him the point god for a reason. What he's able to provide for the team offensively, and even in his prime defensively. Just excited to see, like you said, what he's going to be able to provide for the Clippers. I know it was something that we had talked about as well. He was wanting to be a starter, so I was kind of surprised that he signed with the Clippers because we were talking about the Mavs, and I think there was another team that I can't think of off the top of my head, but there was other opportunities for him to potentially be a starter somewhere else. So the fact that he went to the Clippers kind of showed me that, like you said, he's trying to, he had a great career there. He was there I think for 6 years, and I think I saw like the accolades he was able to get when he was there. He had like 5 all stars, 5 all NBAs. So he's one of the best guards in the league, if not the best at the time. So just really excited to see what he can provide for them because like you say, he is older now, but he's still probably one of the best passers in the league. And when he has the right team around him, like you said, I think the San Antonio stint was a little premature because of the Wemby injury and just kind of where they're at in their timeline. Obviously, they got a lot of guards now, so he probably kind of saw the writing was on the wall for him to probably not have as big as a role as he was probably going to want to, that he was wanting to have there. But going to the Clippers, man, they've had a really good offseason. I mean, we talked about it last time. Bradley Beal, they got John Collins, and they're able to get all these pickups. Now they got CP, so we'll see, man. It's going to be interesting. I think there was I was looking at the roster. It's not up, but I think he's gonna be coming off the bench. But even their second unit looks decent. So I saw that they're a little older.
I'll go with Chris Dunn.
Yeah, Chris Dunn.
Then,
Yeah. Is Derrick Jones Jr. still there? Right.
yeah, I mean, if everybody's going, we talked about it. I think it'll be Harden, Dunn, Kawhi, Collins, Zoo.
You think Bill's coming off the bench?
Nah, actually, nah, you're right. Well, I think Beal will have to start because they're gonna have to see what he can do. Chris Dunn will come off the bench, but they'll have a good starting lineup.
Yeah.
It'll be CP.
I think we talked about it as well on the last podcast. Just what they are able to do defensively. They're super versatile. So I think adding CP to kind of be the leader of the second unit, I think it's gonna be great. That they're definitely, like I said, a little older. So they might be CP injury away from having a all right bench, but if he could stay healthy all year like he did this past season, then I think he's going to be contributing to winning games and doing what CP has been doing for his whole career. Like you said, he's one of my favorite players too. Growing up, he was in NBA Street Home Court. I don't know if you remember that. They would have like certain home courts wherever the basketball players are from, and he's from North Carolina, and like. I think he dropped like 40 after his grandpa passed away. So all like the lore behind CP, bro. He's just a small guard too. He's like kind of just showing us that you don't need to be you don't need to be a 6'10" demigod like KD or a 6'8" freak athlete like LeBron. You can just be savvy and smart and still be one of the best players, one of the best point guards in the league. So shout out to CP, bro. Like you said, it's kind of bringing back some 2010s vibes with him, and then in our next person that we're going to talk about as well, just kind of seeing them back in their spot wherever we saw a lot in our childhood of them succeed. So shout out to CP, bro. Hope he has a good season, and we'll see how the Clippers do, man. I know that that's y'all's ops, but we'll see.
I was gonna say their bench. I'm thinking about it. Like we could go through the roster. It might be a bit thinner than I originally, when we do our predictions for the upcoming season, I think the Clippers' weakness may be their bench. Mm-hmm. I think they're defensively Also, their defense could be an issue, but
Mm-hmm.
they're
Oh, Brook Lopez
they
was
have
there.
a good, huh?
They just got Brook Lopez too. That was their. I was like, they got someone.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, he's solid for
Yeah,
sure. They'll be okay for sure. We'll
yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I'm not gonna talk too highly of the Clips.
The only thing
You
I'm worried
guys
about
know.
is their age, bro. Like their roster is pretty
Yeah.
old, so we'll see how especially we've seen Kawhi kind of sparingly with his minutes and when he plays. Obviously, we saw him be great in the playoffs. Wasn't enough, but we see glimpses. You know what I mean? And I think it's just gonna be really Harden going out there, probably doing what he did last year, and kind of figuring out who's gonna be. I mean, I'm assuming they probably think Bradley Beal is gonna be that answer, but we'll see, man. Like you said, it's. But I'm really worried about when we get into like the predictions and stuff. Age is gonna be a huge thing for me because realistically, like yeah, they could probably win games, but if they do that, if they play 65 games each, try to get awards and stuff, that might hurt them in the back half of the season when it really does matter. So,
Brook Lopez down the stretch. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
man. And he can, you know, he can still get it done in the paint, but I feel like he's also fallen off as a defender, like you're mentioning, just the age. But we'll have to see. Shout
Mm-hmm.
out the Clips and CP3. Hey, this next dude, man, Damian Lillard going back to the Portland Trailblazers, $42 million, no trade clause in full effect. Not playing next year due to a torn Achilles that happened in the NBA playoffs this past year. Sentimental, very reminiscent of 2010s, like you mentioned earlier. Damian Lillard is arguably the greatest Portland Trailblazer ever.
Yeah.
Him going back to the Blazers has more to do, kind of similar to the Chris Paul situation, but more to do with him. He recognizes that maybe a championship isn't what he's after. That's kind of what this signaled to me. That's okay. I think that was gonna what I was gonna talk about is Damian Lillard. I don't think is concerned with winning an NBA championship at this point in his career. After everything he's done for the Blazers slash Bucks, he feels it's only right to go back home and make an impact. He's going there in a similar role to CP. They did get rid of Anthony Simons, so he will have more of a role there, I would say, once he comes back. But Shaden Sharp, Scoot Henderson, those are the Blazers' main guys, I would say, without a doubt. It's not Dame anymore. I think this is more about the fans and him wanting to return to Portland and feel like he's in his home spot. And if I'm being honest with you, I haven't said this on the pod yet. I don't think Damian Lillard should have ever left Portland. Obviously, we saw how it played out with Milwaukee, but Milwaukee's also won one championship with a once in a generational player. They haven't been able to put the rosters together around somebody who I would argue is better than Damian Lillard. People would, they have their own opinions about that. Giannis Antetokounmpo is better than Lillard.
Yes.
They haven't been able to do it since that one championship. And once you win, you never have to apologize. But since it hasn't paid dividends since, Damian Lillard being in a Milwaukee Bucks jersey just never sat right to me. And I don't think it ever sat right to him. And the injury, I think, signaled to Lillard he's at a point in his career where he doesn't have much time. Like you always say, the writing is on the wall. Milwaukee had to make a decision. Milwaukee couldn't build around, and we've said this before on the pod, but just an aging veteran who has an injury like this to this nature. And Damian Lillard used to be a young, athletic, spry point guard, somebody who could dunk on you. Now I would say he's transitioned into like a sniper, somebody who's in range as soon as they cross the logo. Just the way that he plays allows for him to play a little bit longer. But I know Portland wanted to make a sentimental play, get some veteran leadership in, somebody who's been around the Blazers locker room for a long time. I'm excited to see him work with Chauncey Billups as well. I know Chauncey Billups, for people who don't know, was a great point guard too. So Damian Lillard had a bunch of different coaches on the Blazers, Terry Stotts included, but I think Chauncey Billups is going to give him different looks and make sure that he succeeds. And we've seen what happened with Dame last time he was in a Blazers uniform, putting up 70 points. Obviously, being the main focal point of the offense, it'll be a bit different now that he's older, but I know Chauncey Billups knows how to use him. So I'm excited to see what Damian Lillard can bring to the Blazers. We know what he's brought. but we'll have to see what he can bring after a torn Achilles and a different roster.
Mm-hmm.
They also have a logjam at point guard, Drew Holiday being in the mix, and they have a logjam at center, which is really interesting. But they did get rid of Aiton, but Young Hansen and Klingon they'll have to figure out. So they have a couple things they need to figure out before they can implement Dame. And I think once he comes back, he'll have to really settle in. It may take 1 to 2 months for him to get his footing just because he hasn't played in a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's when I first saw this, I was like you said, man. I don't think he ever should have left Portland. I understand why he did at the time, but sometimes, and I think this was a great example of it. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. You may think that going to another team with one of the generational players, like you said, it'll lead to wins, and it just didn't end up working out. And now he's back in Portland, so I think he understood that. And like you said, I just don't think he's at the point in his career after an injury like this that some people don't even come back from. I know it's kind of getting to medicine and surgeries are good now to where we are kind of not expecting it, but it's not as surprising when someone does come back. But usually when they do, they're not the type of player that they were prior to. And like you said, he's kind of the evolution of his game and just kind of the type of player he is now isn't really going to, it'll affect his jump shot. I actually saw Kevin Durant said that as well, like coming off of Achilles injury, it does affect kind of like your jumping motion and like your pushing of the ball and stuff, because you just kind of you're that's in the back of your head. But like you said, he's a sniper and his role isn't going to be what it was when he first was there. But I think it's they needed a guy that the fans could get behind, and someone that has been there and proved himself in that city. And I think I saw a lot of Portland fans just like happy, man. Like this was like their huge pickup of the season. And granted, he's not going to play this upcoming season, but I think they just know kind of what he was able to provide for them. He gave them hope, and I think that's something a lot of basketball fans, especially when the Portland Trailblazers, for instance, that they've kind of been in limbo since his departure. So the fact that they were able to get him back and kind of not making crazy moves, but just the fact that you were able to bring someone back that just meant so much to the city, I think that kind of just shows the type of ownership that they have, and just kind of what Dame meant to them. Like I said, didn't make it to a finals, didn't win a chip, but that's obviously the goal in the league or in any league. But that's not how the cookie crumbles. You know what I mean? That's just not how it goes. And I think a lot of people, especially nowadays, they kind of they try to hop off and just join a team to try to win a chip, and it just doesn't end up working out. And they figure out that I'd rather go somewhere where I've established myself. His family, I know, was like living there whenever he was in Milwaukee for the first year. And, so trying to get back to just where he was in his career when he was at Portland, bro. I'm excited to see it. Like you said, his role isn't going to be what it was whenever he was there at first, but I think he can, if granted, recovery and everything else, everything goes well, I think he's kind of what they're missing a little bit, just a veteran in that locker room, and someone that can go for 30, 40 at potentially, if he could stay healthy, right, and recover the correct way. So
I was going to say, I think he's going to come back and still be able to get you 15 to 20.
Right.
I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. So when he comes back, do you think he's going to be coming off the bench?
Yeah. But he's going to play a while,
right?
Especially if he's cooking,
right?
And if he's cooking, he may play a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing Damian Lillard, he's a Hall of Famer. You can't really doubt somebody even at that age. And we've seen this generation of players specifically. Like, for some reason, you mentioned modern medicine earlier. It might be because of Curry, LeBron, Harden, Durant. Like, those guys aren't killers still.
Right.
Please.
Right.
Even after all those injuries, please.
Yeah.
No, right. Yeah. So
it's exciting.
We have to be wary. Yeah, like you said, I saw Blazers fans super excited. I seen something on Bleacher Report. They are so at Summer League. I saw like the reactions and stuff like that. Like, people were just super over the moon for that because they know like he's still Damian Lillard.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
I mean, at the end of the day, like you just said, he can get you 30 or 40 if he's cooking. I believe even at 36, 37 years old, you can give me 20
Yeah.
on a good night. Like I think Damian Lillard is that, and the Blazers have that now, which they didn't have before after they gave up Simon. So good for them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they did something for their roster. It ended up being a sentimental play, but like you just said, I think they, to them, for the team's sake, obviously Dame made the move back to Portland for him, but for the Blazers, like they added somebody they know can provide.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it perfectly, so I love that. Um, yeah, shout out Damian Lillard. We are excited to see how that works. It won't be next year, but seeing what Portland's developed over the course of 2 years, I love it.
Yeah.
I love what they're doing. They're trying their best. It's not perfect. They've gotten off some interesting players. I don't think they should have gotten rid of Simons. The Drew Holiday thing was the most questionable thing they've done in the last couple of years. But other than that, I've agreed with most decisions they've made. They just have, they're in limbo. You said it perfectly, but limbo is like in the middle. They don't really know where they're going,
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Dame, man.
100%.
Excited to
Yeah,
see
shout
what
out,
he can
man.
be because we know the type of player he is. Top 75, everything. Everything he was able to be.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to see that because I know that's going to be a lot better than people expect.
Mm-hmm.
So, three-man weave, audience, prepare for that. But let's get into the off-season files, man. Let's talk about Houston.
Yeah.
The way we do it on this show, we go through all 30 teams, and the way we started off is me and CJ like to give the three franchise players that we know the team is building around. Now, this is up to the audience. It's very subjective. We understand if you guys leave in the comment section, you guys might be thinking of different players. Me and CJ won't knock you on that, but these are our core players that we feel the Houston Rockets, which is today's offseason files, we feel like are the main players they're building around. So let's hop right into it. Me and CJ will go fourth. First player off the list, I think it's very simple. It's very clear who this player is. It's Alp, man. It's Alperen Şengün, the Turkish superstar. We've seen him grow into a baby Jokic, as the kids like to say. I just think he's Alp. We've seen him grow a lot, man. Post scorer. He's developed a really good mid range post game, just like little hook shots and floaters that weren't in his game. Then the passing, I think for everybody that doesn't watch Alp, shame on you. But if once you do, you'll recognize kind of where he gets the Jokic from. That initiator, facilitator at the big man spot. I think he sees things that some players, some guards may not see. He's just a versatile scoring option. His defense is his weakness, but just at his size and his length, as long as he provides scoring and rebounding, there's a reason why he's signed a rookie extension for 5 years, 185 million. I think it has an escalator in it as well through 2029 and 2030. So they've got him locked up. This is a signal to me, CJ, that they know who they're building around, and there's really not a better player to do so on this roster. He is the most gifted player on the team, just from his, I would say, basketball IQ. And so that's what makes him the most special. And like I mentioned, just scoring threat, rebounding, very good passer. He needs to work on his defense. But the contract is super favorable in my opinion, especially for the value that he's been able to bring to the team. All-star last year, so that's pretty cool. Alp is finally getting the recognition he deserves. I would say one of the more underrated players over the last couple of years. But on this podcast, we understand that players like Derek White, Alperen Şengün can no longer be underrated at some point.
Right.
But going right into our next player, it's none other than Kevin Durant. And I want to hear your thoughts and opinions on this. What do you think about the number at 54 million before I talk about KD for this year?
It's a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I think for what he's able to provide and kind of what the Rockets are needing, I think it's a perfect fit. They kind of, I mean, we'll get into it whenever we get into the contracts. They are in the first apron of the luxury tax, but I think it's a good move for them because of just their situation that they're in right now. They were missing someone that can do what KD does, and not a lot of people could do that, for everyone that obviously does not know. But just being able to score at will, I think that's exactly the thing that they're missing, and that's exactly what they're getting with KD. Yeah, you're paying him a lot of money, but I think it's well worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I started off with that question because CJ is exactly right. The Suns, the contract is massive. The production, Thunder, Katie, you see the shirt. You see the shirt. Uh, for our audio listeners, CJ's got on the Kevin Durant vintage T-shirt. But Suns signed KD to a massive contract. You have to satisfy your superstar, but it's a rising contract as he gets older. He's on a 4-year, 190 currently owed $54 million for this year. CJ, you brought up a really good point. He's productive. He's worth it in every way. My only concern is his injuries. He's going to have to maintain high volume offensive responsibilities within the offense for this move to make sense. I think he will. He's one of the best scorers we've ever seen, and you could argue he is the best scorer we've ever seen. I think Rafael Stone and Ime Udoka, they're fist pumping. They know the type of player that Kevin Durant is, what he's brought for the league. I'm not even going to talk about it. We know Kevin Durant, the history that he's, um, you know, really just like every player that comes into the league now models their game after Kevin Durant. The traits, the type of player, the length, the size, everything. Just he is a generational type of player, and this really just signals that Houston is making a shift towards pushing for an NBA championship. Um, he must deliver. That's the last thing I will say. We know Kevin Durant's injury history is not the best, and it comes at a risk. It comes at a cost. We could be looking at a potential catastrophic issue if Durant declines or if he gets hurt.
Yeah.
The Rockets cannot afford to have a number that's rising. Next year, I think it's 58, but it's rising, and God forbid Kevin Durant doesn't get you 25 a night or gets injured, and you owe that money. So we'll have to see how that plays out. He is currently the second player that they are building around firmly, and even at his age, it kind of goes to show how special of a player he really is. Just as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
The next guy, this dude is my favorite player on the list. He's just a two-way superstar, and another no doubt. Like if you don't have for the Houston Rockets, I would be shocked. But it's none other than Amen Thompson in year 3 of his rookie scale deal. He's earning approximately $10 million this year for his two-way services, which at this point in the NBA is the most valuable player archetype you can have. And Amen Thompson is one of the most dangerous players in the NBA. Just his defensive leadership has been amazing. Him and Tari Eason are the Terror Twins. Wanted to shout out Tari, but Amen Thompson has turned into a player that I don't think they expected to be growing this quick. Ime Udoka changed that. His last season, he asked a lot of him, and I think he stepped up to the challenge, specifically in the playoffs. We saw what he was doing in the regular season. I think he stepped up in the playoffs even more so, being one of the main reasons, and LP, that Houston was able to go to 7 games with the Warriors. He's been able to rise to the occasion every single time. He's made significant jumps every single season, and me and CJ expect no less this coming up next year. I would say he's the more dangerous Thompson twin in this current stage, and you're looking at a potential All-Star. I think it's really simple. He's going to make a ton of all defensive teams. I wouldn't be shocked moving forward in his career, and I am so glad he ended up in Houston because Houston was desperately looking for somebody with two-way intangibles, and Amen Thompson answers the bell. Very cheap player. Again, he's on a 4-year deal. I think next year they'll be able to offer him that extension. So we'll see what happens with that. The last thing I was going to bring up is his contract is going to be expensive, and it will send them to the second apron, so it must be worth it. And we're excited to see where Amen Thompson ends up, man. I'm very happy with the type of player that he's turned into, and I know CJ is really excited to see his growth next year. But CJ, before we get into the cap situation, man, out of these 3 players, who is your favorite and why?
It's got to be Amen Thompson, bro. I mean, just because of, like you said, just what he's able to provide on the defensive side of the ball, for one, but just kind of his potential. That's why I am very excited to see the type of player that he's going to be this upcoming season, just because what he was able to do this whole last year defensively was spectacular. Probably one of the best athletes on the court majority of the time, and just kind of seeing what he can be offensively is where I'm like super excited to
Yeah.
see, because if he can develop some type of like mid-range game, a jump shot, like he's gonna be super dangerous. So definitely, Amen. You nailed that that take for sure.
Um,
Obviously Sengun is great, but I think upside, I think Amen Thompson. We're
Two
looking
way.
we're looking at probably one of the better players in this league in the future.
Sure, I love that. It's a confident answer. Would you like to dive into their cap situation, my man?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yeah. So for
All
everyone
right.
that doesn't know, the next segment of our offseason files, we like to look in the cap situation and financial flexibility of each team. And with the Houston Rockets, their total payroll is $192 million. They're approximately 37 million over the current salary cap and just 4.5 over the tax threshold, while remaining 15 million under the second apron. So obviously, for everyone that doesn't know, once you hit the first apron and second apron, you have consequences. So since they hit that first apron, they are in the luxury tax zone facing escalating penalties, but haven't hit the hard cap yet. They can still sign minimum salary players, or make room clearing trades, though they can't use the taxpayer mid-level exception or combine multiple non-taxpayer deals. So the major contracts, we talked about two of these players already.
Right.
Kevin Durant is taking a huge chunk of the salary cap with $54.7 million. Like I said, I think it's worth it if he can stay healthy. He'll show all Houston faithfuls kind of what
All star.
he's able to do. All star, all the accolades, But like you said, if he does get injured or if he doesn't produce at that level, then it's going to look a little questionable. But as of right now, I think that's a great for what they needed. It was great for them. Next person
Sure.
up is like you said, Alfred Sengun. He's making 33.9 million off of that, coming off that rookie extension. I think that's a great pickup or a great contract extension from them. Obviously, they got rid of Jalen
Yeah.
Green, and that was their other young guy that they were trying to figure out. Even we were trying to figure out who's going to be that second guy. So I think that was a great extension. Like you explained perfectly the type of player that he is and what he's able to provide, and even at that, that price tag, I think it's a solid deal, especially just for what he's able to do on the offensive side of the ball. Be a baby Joker, like you said. Just
Right.
kind of being the floor general of the offense. So I think that's a great one. And then the veterans, they have Fred VanVleet and Steven Adams. And
Kenny
they
Smith.
they add around $38 million combined. I think I talked about this, a couple times. Kind of where they were at a couple years ago whenever they signed Van Vliet and also Dylan Brooks to that those hefty contracts. I think it was just kind of they had the money to spend, so that's why they paid them. But I think Fred Van Vliet's a solid player. I think we saw what he was able to provide for the Houston Rockets in the playoffs this past year, and just kind of seeing what having that locker room, like veteran locker room presence, can do for a young team. And I think he's for what he's getting paid, I think it's decent, especially for where they're at and just how young they are. They have so much young guys that don't really get a lot of run, but with Fred Van Vliet there, what you're gonna get for him. So you have to
Exactly.
pay some of these veterans, maybe a little more overvalued than what they should be getting paid. But I think for what he's able to provide for them, he's a great pickup. And then also Steven Adams, just kind of having that lockdown big in the paint for them whenever, I think they were running double big at points at times during the season with Sengun at the 4 and then Adams at the 5. And they got Clint Capella as well, so they're trying to kind of, we're going back to the double big lineups for everyone that doesn't know. And I think it's getting Steven Adams was kind of just the something to keep them like being comfortable where their big man rotations are, because they have Sengun kind
No,
of
right.
holding it down, but they also could raw small ball. They're super versatile. So yeah, no, they're looking good on their cap space. Like you said, they're in the first apron of the luxury tax, but I think that's really because of the Kevin Durant
With the
contract.
price.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I nothing crazy. No
No crazy
crazy,
issues.
no
Yeah.
crazy cap
A couple
holds. Not,
cap holds.
yeah, a couple, but
They
not like who was it?
the Warriors.
Warriors.
Yeah.
Not like the Warriors, bro. There's five,
19, I
but
think it was.
yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple. I think like Bobon's on there. I know you guys, the Bobon faithful. I think they have another dude on there who's owed
Reggie Bullock.
a few million. Reggie Bullock, that's the other player that they signed on a whim for no reason from the
Mm-hmm.
Mavericks. And some of that stuff gets you caught up. It's just dead money.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you have to reserve that money to pay those players.
Mm-hmm.
Very simple. Thank you for that, CJ. Yeah, 192 million is their total payroll. I think they are one of the cheaper teams for the type of team they have.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know, and that says a lot about their Rafael Stone and his work that was done in the front office, and then just the roster that they've been able to build. I think the draft, right, is
Yeah, I
so
was just about
important.
to say that. I think
Yeah,
their books are so good just because they're able to draft
the
really
draft.
good players. Yeah, like the rookie extensions or rookie deals
I
that they're
mean,
still on. Like you said, Amen. He's still on his rookie contract, so they're in a good spot. Like I said, they definitely probably have had the one of if not the best, one of the best off seasons. I would probably say the best, to be honest. But just kind of what they're able to build around. Their identity is on the defensive side, and they got one of the best offensive players in the league, and they kind of just
ever
pieced everyone else in. So super excited. They've done really well, like you said, in the first apron. But for what the quality of team that they are, I think they're in a good situation.
yeah. Let's get right into, that leads us into our next segment where we do it on here is we like to talk about some on the court things that they can do, maybe some off the court moves if their balance sheet is super unhealthy. The Rockets have a clean one, so not a ton we could talk about there, but on the court, man, I think it starts with their offensive chemistry. You know where I'm going with this, CJ. They got to figure out how to get Kevin Durant going and building those pick and roll schemes with Şengün and letting KD initiate. I think they have to be careful. I think Fred VanVleet can dribble the air out of the ball at times, and he's very used to running point guard. But I think they should look into letting Kevin Durant run the offense, letting Şengün run the offense. Afraid to give Amen Thompson some touches too, being the initiator, taking some of the duties off of Fred VanVleet. Really just building their offense around Kevin Durant, trying to figure out that structure and what that looks like. The Houston Rockets have been not stuck in mud at times on their offense, but it seemed inconsistent sometimes. They haven't been able to have that go-to scorer. They were looking for that from Jalen Green, and they weren't able to get that. I think Kevin Durant is going to be able to do so and be that go-to guy whenever they need a bucket, and he'll be able to get it. I mean, he's a 7-1 demigod who could score from anywhere on the court, but don't underestimate how difficult it is to be able to fit in this type of player to your roster. I'll be honest with you guys. I love Kevin Durant, but CJ, what's something you've noticed since he's left the Warriors?
He's not the best defensive guy.
And he also hasn't been back to the finals.
Fair. Yeah.
So for people who say Kevin Durant's not a winning player, I understand your point. In my opinion, I don't see it. He's obviously a winning player. But you do have to be mindful about adding somebody like this to your roster. It does take time to figure out. And he is going to take up a lot of shots. And that is going to hurt your offensive chemistry. Mm-hmm. Guys like Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, some guys are going to suffer. I would tell the Houston Rockets one of the most important things they can do is focus on how their chemistry looks with Kevin Durant while also letting their younger players develop. Because I don't think they should be on Kevin Durant's timeline. They need to be on Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd, right? We haven't talked about him yet. He's timeline. Those are the younger guys that they need to be building around. And I'll touch on that a little bit. But the number two thing they need to do, and this goes with the offensive chemistry, is what do they need to focus on with the offensive chemistry? Well, that's shooting, spacing, pace. They need to be able to space the floor around Kevin Durant, Alp. Those guys, unfortunately, are not three-point threats. They usually play close to the rim. Kevin Durant specifically does a ton of damage in the mid-range. That's why adding Dorian Finney-Smith was a big pickup for them. He can space the floor. Having Fred VanVleet, Jabari Smith Jr., allowing the gravity from Kevin Durant, Alperen Şengün to be absorbed so guys can have space that's created. I think they need to be getting up at least 40 or 50 three-pointers per night. It's also another thing they need to work on is really upping their three-point attempts. To me, at times they played slow last year and they didn't shoot enough threes. They shot a really poor percentage, but I think adding shooters like DFS, Kevin Durant, is going to help other guys feel more confident to shoot. And that's going to increase the percentages. The more attempts, better the percentages, most likely. You'll be able to hit more threes. You will make more threes if you shoot more. So they need to figure out that. Uh, like I mentioned, Fred VanVleet's great, but you don't want to get into the habit of letting him initiate the offense because that means he's going to dictate the pace. I think they should let other guys bring up the ball and focus on the 3-point volume and just the spacing around KD and LP. If they can nail that, I think the kind of coinciding with the offensive chemistry, I think they'll be a-okay this next year. And if everybody stays healthy, they should be a top 10 offense in the league.
Mm-hmm.
This is like on record at 3-man. I'm going off on a limb. I'm saying they're going to be able to, because they have Ime Udoka, Kevin Durant, Alperen Sengun. They have the pieces to do it. It's just going to take some. But that goes into my next point, which is player development. You know, we've talked about some other teams kind of building around their younger guys. Houston's in a really peculiar spot. Now, adding Kevin Durant to the mix changes what they were doing. In my opinion, they need to let Alperen Sengun, Jabari, Amin Thompson, Reed Shepard, all of their younger pieces have a say in the offense. I think that's how they develop. Kevin Durant should and will run the show, but that shouldn't be the point of next year. Next year, it should be trying to develop our younger pieces, seeing what guys can do. Like you mentioned earlier, Amin Thompson has to grow offensively. I would say Jabari Smith Jr. needs to grow offensively. And getting Reed Shepard on the court, my goodness, would be nice. I mean, getting rid of Cam Whitmore, we haven't talked about that yet, but that does open up a spot. I think he was sulking on the bench because of his opportunities. He wasn't able to get an offensive rhythm, and that's the other thing I have in my notes is you need to be able to allow these guys to get an offensive rhythm or a defensive rhythm. Let them make the mistakes. Let them figure it out. Look into playing through those younger guys instead of through Kevin Durant's age. I think you can get into trouble when you see the media, you hear a bunch of people telling you what to do. The Rockets are on a specific timeline. They're one of the most interesting teams we have in the league because they do have a superstar, but that's the only person who's old on their roster pretty much, besides Steven Adams. Everybody else is a young gun trying to come up in this league. So I think that gives them an opportunity to play deep into the playoffs. And they're going to be fearful going into next year for sure, especially if they can nail this player development thing, which they have through the draft. And now it just has to translate on the court. And I think we're watching that right now. But the last thing they can do to strategically improve on the court is build around their defensive identity. I think last season, to me, their defense was so great. I mean, Dylan Brooks, they did lose, but they did add Dorian Finney-Smith, who's another good defender. And I think the schemes that Ime Udoka has put in place has allowed for Houston to be a defensive-minded team. And we've talked about offense this entire time, but let's not forget how good the Houston Rockets are on defense. And they need to lean into that full and maybe even let that dominate their identity. There's nothing wrong with being the number 2 defensive team and the number 12 offense, right? Having a really, it's a pretty good offense, not the best, but good, and then a really good defense, man, that's going to spell danger for other Western Conference teams in the entire league. So continuing to lean into that defensive identity is going to be super important. We know adding Kevin Durant, you said it, he's not the best defender. Figuring out ways to hide Alperen Sengun, who's also lacking in defense. Those two guys is going to be super important, but everybody else is fairly strong on defense. Even Fred VanVleet plays at his, bigger than his size. He's a very bulky guard who likes to bother offenders. And then obviously Amin Thompson and Eason, Terror Twins, Jabari Smith Jr.'s length, the blocks, the Rockets are scary, man. Steven Adams being a rim protector. There's a lot of issues there if you're playing offense against the Rockets. So they just got to lean into that identity, and I think they do all those 4 things. They figure out their offensive chemistry. They do the space, pace, and shooting. They build through their player development, which they've already started doing, and then they lean into their defensive identity. I think they're going to be a really scary team, top 5 in the NBA.
Yeah. I was just about to ask you, what are your early predictions of what do you think they're at their full potential? What do you think? Where do you think they can be in this upcoming season?
I would say top. I would say 4. I mean Thunder. The Knicks are up there. I mean, I don't want to say my top five, but the Knicks are really good.
Mm-hmm.
The Celtics and Cavs are iffy to me, but I'm going to put them up there. They still are a very good roster. They still have the same roster. The Rockets are right in the top five for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree.
Just their balance sheet, their where they're building towards, and that's the last thing I wanted to touch on. I'm glad you brought it up, but they don't have a ton of off-season moves to make off the court. You
Mm-mm.
mentioned it. They've had the best off-season so far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Even where they were from last season to now, I would say they've improved their team tenfold, and they're looking way scarier than last season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, if they can, hold their hat high on their defensive identity, I have no reason to think that they're not going to be a better team than they were last year, which is crazy because they were the
Exactly.
number 2 seed last year. So, yeah, it just puts it in its perspective, like just what they've been able to build and kind of those years after Harden, left, like they were kind of down, but they got some great picks and were able to build through the draft, like I said, and I think that's something that is very underrated for certain franchises because it's Houston, it's a huge city, but like they don't really get a lot of free agents going there, so they had to build through the draft. And now obviously with KD getting here, it was a trade, but it was a big trade that they're able to get a super offensive superstar that it was, like I've been saying, exactly what they were missing. So I'm super excited to see what the Rockets could be this upcoming season. And just like you said, they got the young guy. Everyone is young besides, like you said, KD and Steven Adams. Everyone else they still have a lot to prove. We still don't even know what their true potential is. So it's scary. It's scary. Dude, the West is just keeps getting better, like we always
So
talk about, bro.
loaded, so loaded, man. And yeah, the Rockets are a dangerous team. So I wouldn't say they're better than the Thunder, but they are competing for top three in the West, no
Mm-hmm.
doubt. And it's going to be exciting to see. I mean, they finished second last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, yeah,
They're
it's gonna be super exciting, bro. I'm super excited to see what they turn into this upcoming season.
for sure. They have a great balance sheet, great roster. Anything else you want to add for our three-man weave audience for today, my man?
No, man, I think this was a good one, man. Just we're starting to get better at these, the outlines and just kind
I
of what we
know.
talk about. So no, I think this was great, bro. Just kind of,
Lots
I
of clarity.
just love giving people the behind the scenes stuff that you don't think about a lot, just but it matters. And I feel like that's something that we've been trying to let y'all understand. Just it's more than just the game on the court. It's the business behind closed doors, and just making sure you're in good standing for your balance sheet, so you're able to make moves and move people around, and just piecing hopefully a contender in the league. So
And
shout out
piece
to
of
the Rockets,
contender
bro.
together,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anything
Shout out
else?
H Town, man.
Anything else you
Houston, man.
want to let the audience know before we head out of here, bro?
Nah, man. LA signing Marcus Smart. We didn't
Yeah.
talk about it in the outline, but the
What do you think about
buyout,
that?
man, I like it. He's not a massive headline for people, but I know defensive player of the year. We need defense. We don't need more people that are going to take up offensive spots. He's going to play hard all the time, be willing to get 5 fouls, and just play on the edge. And we need somebody like that. I think Luka Doncic recruited him. I'm excited to see where the Lakers end up, man. Just been thinking about them. They've had a decent offseason as well for where our balance sheet is and the moves we were able to make. I'm very happy with what we ended up doing, especially for losing Dorian Finney-Smith. Talking about Dorian Finney-Smith
Right.
going to the Houston Rockets, uh, he figures the grass is greener, and we'll see, like we just got done talking about. So, other than that, man, just wanted to touch over that. Glad we got an opportunity to talk about the Houston Rockets and CP and Dame, and yeah, like we always say this, bro, but it's just an honor to chop it up with you, man.
Yeah, bro.
Just thankful that we get to do this, and it's like having a conversation in our backyard. So it ain't nothing new to us.
Yes, sir. Yeah, man. Well, if y'all liked and enjoyed this episode of Three Man Weave, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time, man. Peace. Three man, three man, three man. Yes,
Come on,
sir.
man.